Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the BRICS summit in Xiamen today. In China, there was no direct reference to terrorism and its Pakistani sponsors, only an indirect hint.
In an environment where we seek stability, sustainable development and prosperity, BRICS leadership will be crucial in driving this transformation. If we as BRICS can set the agenda in these areas, the world will call this its golden decade.
It was left to senior officials to underscore India's concern about terrorism and non-state actors.
Issues of interest, of course, as I said, apart from the economic aspects of the cooperation, I think there are certain developments in the world which are important for us. And I'm sure leaders, when they meet like this, are bound to look at it, including the scourge of terrorism, which has been a very important subject for us.
As it happened, the BRICS declaration reflected all of India's concerns on that score. I'm quoting from the declaration: "We call upon the international community to establish a genuinely broad counter-terrorism coalition and support the UN's central coordinating role in this regard. We express concern on the security situation in the region and violence caused by the Taliban, the ISIL or Daesh, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, including Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, the Haqqani Network, the lashkar-e-taiba, the jaish-e-mohammad, the TTP and the Hizbul Tahrir." The declaration on terrorism had two positive implications. One, it obviated the need for the Prime Minister to address an issue that could have raised hackles in China. Two, it underscored that India and China, despite the Doklam standoff, had the maturity to keep dialogue going. The declaration would have satisfied all the members since it named those groups that directly threatened each of them. The point is whether it changes anything on the ground. The pundits say that China, at least in the near future, is unlikely to relax its opposition to India's attempts to ban Masood Azhar of the jaish-e-mohammad, nor is it likely to crack down hard on Pakistan providing a sanctuary to terror groups. But this declaration may give Beijing the leverage to pressure Pakistan to exercise more control over them. The declaration mentioned the India-proposed Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism, languishing since 1996 in the records of the United Nations, as the ideal treaty to tackle terror funding. Clearly, as declarations go, India may have little reason to feel dissatisfied at BRICS. But the killing of two militants in Sopore on the same day underscores how little such declarations really matter on the ground. And with me are all the guests: Vishnu Prakash, Andrew K.P. Long, Ray Locker, Professor Swaran Singh and Ramesh Ramachandran, WION's Senior International Correspondent at Xiamen. Welcome back, everyone. And Professor Singh, let me begin with you. It's being called by many in India as a win for India at BRICS. How big a win is it, considering that little changes on the ground, especially on issues like Masood Azhar?
I would say definitely there is a win in it, but it's a measured and limited win in that sense. And it's very simple because last time when India was hosting the BRICS summit in Goa, Prime Minister Modi really wanted the issue of terrorism and even naming of Pakistan to come in the final declaration. But, you know, any host country has a limitation to ensure success of such an event and ensure that there's a consensus on the final declaration. And Chinese did not want issues of terrorism to go on the Goa declaration last time. And the reverse is true this time. This time you have not just a clear mention of terrorism, but a detailed list of all the outfits named there. Now, even if Pakistan is not mentioned by name, but you know, all the groupings that are mentioned there are, you know, known to everybody, are being hosted or are based in Pakistan. So in that sense, I think this also involves a bit of a limitation of a host country to allow other countries to, you know, push their way in certain manner. This test in North Korea may have also dented the whole leverages that Chinese had, because they got distracted, they got a little more vulnerable because of global expectations for Chinese to do something with North Korea. But again, you know, it's an achievement in certain way, but you know, it's only names of outfits. Already you are noticing varying interpretations in China and India on what it means. It doesn't mention any name of individuals. So Azhar Masood will still continue to be a kind of a tough nut for us to crack between China and India. They have also, if you notice, mentioned focusing on the root causes. Now, Chinese are not going to look at root causes the way we understand, because, they're not going to talk about Xinjiang and what leads to violence there. So, varying interpretations of what is contained in this 43-page final document is already visible. And I think both sides will begin to interpret these things very differently over a period of time. But good that we have taken a step forward in this. Two countries have hardly anything to do with terrorism, South Africa and Brazil.
Yes.
Russia, China, India have a very different take on how they want to tackle terrorism. For India, Pakistan is a major issue. Chinese would not like that to sort of brought on the table. So there is a varying interpretation that we have on
and I think we Indians like to see the glass half full. Vishnu Prakash, I have this declaration with me. It's 43 pages long, and I've been trying to make sense of what it says beyond the very obvious. If it is a win for India, would you say it's a largely symbolic one?
Well, I think it's neither a win for India. I would not put it as a win for India, nor would I term it as symbolic. I would agree with Professor Swaran Singh that this is a step forward. It's a good step forward. It's a useful step forward. From the very fact that during the Goa summit, China in particular did not want any reference to terrorism, and now you have a whole section on terrorism and security issues. And terror organizations like lashkar-e-taiba and jaish-e-mohammad, Taliban, which are based in Pakistan, operate from the soil of Pakistan and train the guns at India. I'm referring to the first two organizations in particular, terror organizations, have been mentioned in the declaration. And Secretary East Preeti Saran made a very pertinent point, which I would like to underline. She said that terrorism was an issue raised not just by India, but by other BRIC countries also. So there appears to be an appreciation that BRICS has to deal with or recognize the issue of terrorism, and the listing of these organizations is important. But then we all know that China's relation with Pakistan is as high as the Himalayas, as deep as the sea, and as sweet as honey. And given those honey and Himalayas and the sea, the very fact that China has been defending Pakistan and has been putting a technical hold, I do not see that changing in a hurry. If it eventually does, certainly we would be very happy. But it is a small step, it's a step forward, and that is a positive development.
Right. Andrew, we are also looking at the statements from China, and many in the Indian media, interestingly, are saying that China has been forced to dump its old friend Pakistan, and this is a big win for India. But the fact is that even if you were not to indulge in these statements of this type, the question is, when China says that we censure terror outfits, is it going to put that sort of pressure on Pakistan to rein in the terrorists that operate from its soil?
Well, definitely China doesn't want to support terrorism, and in fact terrorism is a big problem for the province of Xinjiang and also even Tibet and other areas, because it's spreading into some cities. So terrorism is a big issue for China, and there is in the declaration there is sufficient room for countries, for the BRICS different members, for their interests to be looked after. But I think at the end of the day, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Depends really on how the BRICS members fulfill their intentions, and how that the intentions are translated on the ground. And of course, each country have got different interests. But I think that just focusing on terrorism may be missing the much bigger big picture of the BRICS mechanism, because there are many larger problems for the BRICS outfit to seize the opportunity to make this really more influential when the world order is changing quite rapidly. If you look at the economic side, for example, now all the developing countries, the developing markets, they account for a larger proportion of the world economy than the advanced countries. And also even the growth, the contribution to global growth comes from the the emerging markets rather than the advanced countries. So the world is now at a cusp of a new paradigm, and there are so many issues. The BRICS countries, the way of dealing with issues, crises like North Korea or even Syria, climate change, they are all different. So I think that the BRICS countries, that there are sufficient incentives for them to come together to address these much bigger problems rather than looking at narrow national interests as regards terrorism or some other issues.
Narrow interest as regards terrorism. Very well put. Ray Locker, we're talking about fostering multipolarity. We're talking about the changing world order when we discuss something like BRICS. How does Washington see this? Does the U.S. even care about what's happening in Xiamen?
Well, I think there are certain elements in the United States that care about this. They may not be paramount inside the Trump administration, but people in the foreign policy and the international communities definitely care about what happens with BRICS. And as the rest of the world develops, that's a good thing for the United States if it's prepared to engage, in robust trade negotiations. One of the things with TPP that its proponents liked up until Trump got rid of it was that it gave us, inroads into different growing economies in a way that we did not have before. So those things are an advantage to the United States if they're dealt with correctly. If we engage in isolationism or keep making threats about trade wars with our major trading allies, as the president has done in the last week or so with South Korea and China vis-a-vis North Korea, we're going to suffer. I think the main issue among the business community, the international community here, is that this is all a good thing, but we need to engage and make sure that the White House doesn't hold us back.
Right, and we're looking forward to the bilateral meetings tomorrow, of course, the key one, of course, between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. I'm going to thank you all, Vishnu Prakash, Andrew K.P. Long, Ray Locker, and Professor Swaran Singh. Thank you all for joining us here on Gravitas this evening.